We are 100 kilometers from the Belarusian border. Just a few days ago, on March 3rd, our community was occupied. They were mainly Tuvaluans and Burats. They came in very angry and immediately started to drive people to the local school in Yagidne to the basement. On March 3rd, the Russian terrorists came to us, came from the forest, and immediately occupied the village. They gathered people in the streets, drove them out of the houses, and drove them out to the basement. We were kept in this basement for almost a month. We were sitting here for 27 days. People were sitting here. There was not enough space. People were living here started from the stairs. There were stairs with buckets on them. People were sitting in the corridor one by one. Half a meter of square living space was given to one person. People couldn't sit any further. There were no places to lie down. Everyone was sitting. These are the rooms. We wrote on the door how many people we had in one room. There was a time when we didn't know whether it was day or night. That's why we kept calendars. There were calendars in every room. As there was no hope that we would get out of here alive, we left our autographs. At first, they could drop their green ration for 10 people, for children, thrown out like for dogs. This is the biggest room. There were 139 people in it. They threw away the beds and we took them from the street and made them a place to sleep for the children. There were corpses lying there, and here the children were playing nearby. Before people died, and we have already seen that a person will not live until morning, these people went crazy before they died. The basement of the local school is just a basement without heating. Without light, without anything. When the first person went down to the basement, it was very cold. And with every minute, as soon as people arrived, it became very hot, because there was not enough space. And all the dust rose from the floor, because there were a lot of people. There was nothing to breathe, and people just started to die in this basement. There were 4 people. They had to be in these places for a month. To distract themselves somehow, the children drew, wrote a hymn, and made calendars. When a person died, they put marks. Here we had a 1.5-month-old child who also lacked oxygen. She had to be fed with milk, but there was nothing to feed her with. The children were very sick. There were no medicines. At first, when there was one pill, it had to be divided among 5 children to at least bring down the temperature. When they came to us on March the 3rd, they immediately shot Yanuk, Tolik and Hrishchenko. This is our calendar. We've been marking the days since they came here. On the 30th, they were kicked out of here. These are the people who died on the 9th, 10th, 11th. These people could still live and live. They gave us the press, turned on the light, so that we could read their press about how good they are. If you had to go to the yacht, it was under the wall. People were sitting here with their knees. It was dark, and you could step on everyone's feet. It was even problematic to go to the yacht if the opportunity arose. People also kept their calendar here, scrolling numbers on the wall. There was a school toilet upstairs. They lived there. They went to the toilet. It all flowed to people's heads. They put 367 people in the basement and established their headquarters over the people. Local residents became their so-called human shield. This is what they left behind. It's everywhere. On the second floor, it's the same. Their ammunition was taken out for a month. There was a lot of their ammunition. They put up stretch marks. It was impossible to go anywhere. So many cars in the village were loaded with ammunition. And when they broke down, everything was scattered. They lived here, slept here. At first, their chief sat here. This stele was erected in honor of this tragedy. It is written here from which day people were driven here and when they were liberated. This is how many days people stayed here. This is so that everyone can see and not forget what a disaster they have done to us. Anyone who tried to get to the occupied Yagidne remained on the road forever. Without even entering the village, they came to us in organized columns with shoulder knots. They sat on their tanks from above. They drove like on a parrot. When we asked them why they came, they gave the same answer: "We came to release you." But they couldn't explain from whom to release. But seeing the opposition, they immediately returned to the bulk of the tanks, to the local houses and just shorter residential houses. And the houses were burning. All the people who wanted to go through the door were shot by machine guns. Yes, my husband loved my flowers. There were 10 of us in the cellar. There were 4 children, so we put water on the stove to warm up in a bucket. We pour into cylinders, because it is very cold in the cellar. Suddenly, my husband says that there is a bucket on the stove. He decided to go from the other side of the house, not through the military, but in the bypass, to shut off the gas at the rise at home. As soon as he came out of the cellar, we heard a gunshot. I called my husband, called, "Seryoja, Seryoja," but he didn't respond. We tried to pass, then they fired at us again. Then, at 1 o'clock in the morning, I took my mother-in-law's white handkerchief and offered to hook it to a shovel and wave it to signal that we were civilians and were surrendering. And when I pulled out a white handkerchief on a shovel from the cellar and started waving it, they started firing at us from 2 sides, from there and from there. And then my sister and I decided that we would not go out until morning. At 6 a.m., I said, "No one go out. I'll go out first from the cellar." When I first came out of the cellar, I saw my husband lying a few meters away. He didn't have half his head. The bullet flew right through him. 5 men made a grave here, kneeling, from which it was possible. And 5 men dug a hole in the garden, and from where the tanks shoot. Here, the boys make a grave, and there the tanks shoot, and they sit on the tanks and laugh at us. And when I asked them why they killed my husband, they said, "It wasn't us. How could it be? There was no one else here except you. He gave me a chocolate from the store, which was stolen and then smashed. He said, "Take the chocolate." I said, "No, we won't take anything from you." Yes, we harvest hay a little at a time. There will be such a herbarium for our cow. I was carrying water in a bucket, and the drone stopped here. It immediately hit the house. The whole block burned down. We got hit twice. The house burned down completely. The barn was shot. I have already fixed several holes in the house. I've also made some repairs to the garage. When I walk in here, my heart stops. Yes, that's all that's left of the house. This garbage is all that is left of my house. I had everything in the house. My daughter started to be a pianist, only the strings remained. The son played the bayan. My husband played the accordion. The grandson played the guitar. Everything was in the house. Abundance was sufficient. Everything is gone. There is nothing. There is nothing left. That's all. We live in someone else's house. We don't know what to expect. We are promised, but I don't know what it will be and when. Not a single person in my community became a collaborator. None. I had nothing to negotiate with them, because we saw them every day. They set up their headquarters at every corner of the village. They patrolled the village every morning and every evening. It happened that they came in 5 times a day. They saw me every day, but they didn't know who I was. People were asked, "Where are your authorities?" They were really looking for me. That's why I told my husband in which costume I want to be buried and which photo should be on the monument. But then my husband hugged me and told me that everything would be fine, thanks to my people and God. No one told the occupiers where I was. We learned that a tank drove into the neighbor's yard and drove people out. A new fence was installed. The old one was taken away somewhere. I don't know where it went. And such a piece was preserved from the gate, so it remained standing here. They said they would drive a tank here, and that was it. As soon as the tank entered here, everything flew away. Both the gate and the fence, everything was blown away. Literally, everything was carried away with meat. They drove that tank. We cried and cried. Yana, a neighbor, came running and said that they should be kicked out. Otherwise, they will enter every yard and drive out all the owners. So we went. Yes, we gathered the whole colony because we understood that today they are standing at one of the neighbors and tomorrow they will be at ours. The whole district gathered and went to beg. Parents fell on their knees begging, but they said that there is no elder and they cannot do anything. But when we said that we won't leave here and will stand until the end, they called their senior and promised that they would take the tank. Finally, the tank left the yard. One of them says, "Wait." And here in the evening, around 7 o'clock, we are sitting in the kitchen. We just had dinner. We are getting ready to go to the cellar. Suddenly, we heard a whistle. Once and then again. My husband looked out the window and says, "We are burning." That same day, at 3:30 in the evening, we were sitting in the basement and heard that someone's house was on fire. Andrei, my husband, went around and checked that nothing was burning anywhere, and he jumped up to us and said, "Sit in the basement, and I'll go put out Alexei's house, where the tank was." We started screaming, crying. The first neighbor in flip-flops ran with the fire extinguisher and "let's put it out." So it was possible to extinguish the fire. Everything was destroyed in the kitchen. I don't know how we stayed there alive. The bathtub, which was standing in the corner, flew to the other end. Everything flew away. Nothing remained in place. In the morning, when we went inside, we just looked and cried. With this, they showed us that it is dangerous to protest against them. After several hours, they came and took my husband. He also helped put out the fire, and they decided that he should be taken away. And they decided to gather all our men here. They said, "If you don't all gather here at 10 o'clock, you won't see Vlad again." They said, "If all the men who were at the demonstration don't gather, we will bring a leg." That's it. Again we gathered all the men. We didn't let them go ourselves. We all went together. The entire district that was at the demonstration gathered again. Well, they came to tell us that we don't need to flinch. They said that if we continue to organize demonstrations, there will be little good. When the houses in the village burned, there wasn't a day when our houses weren't on fire, and we worried until the last that the moment would come when it would happen to us. Because everywhere you looked, something was burning. Now we live with the consequences of this disaster. This summer, thanks to the volunteers, we got a roof. And there is not even money to repair something ourselves. This was our home here, and we are trying to build this new one. There was an extension here, and we hid in the cellar nearby. Here was the cellar. Here was the annex boiler room. This is where we were hiding. And here was our house nearby. It's a pity, of course, very much. In 5 minutes, there is nothing left. They drove along the highway, and the muzzles of the tanks were turned towards the houses. My husband gave us 2 minutes to gather everything we needed. We managed to pick up the children. There was no window in our bedroom, so we jumped out through it and ran through the garden to the neighbors in the cellar. I grabbed the smaller child's hand and ran with her. I ran and was afraid to look back to see how the husband and son were there. Mom ran after us. And then my husband said, "I'm looking, and bullets are flying over your head. Here under the iron is our beloved car." This is all that remains of the pottery workshop. A man baked dishes here. People worked. Here is the oven. The ruins are all that is left of our business. It is the property of two brothers. One is fighting and the other is helping armed forces in Chernihiv. Such a feeling in the soul that one doesn't want to leave. I go to the cemetery, cry there. There is no one to tell, to complain to. It's good that I have a daughter. The occupiers raked out everything from the house. They couldn't open the doors, so they climbed through the windows. They broke all the windows. Everything was raked out of the house. Can you imagine? All. Not even a soap, not a match was left behind. Everything was taken away. When I built this house, for me white bread was like a cake. I spared myself everything, saved money. I still don't throw away the banana peel because I have to soak it and then pour it over the tomatoes. I constantly limit myself because I'm used to it, and here it is. The gate was open, and we could see how they took everything out of here. There was an armored personal carrier, and they tried to push a kitchen table into it. I wanted to say, well, why are you doing this? Here, when it blew, everything shook. I was lying on the bed at the time and decided to go for a small break. Thanks to this, I survived. That's how we saved ourselves. We lived in the basement. The bed still remained there, only a little was removed. On the other side, there are many broken windows. The three of us lived here. There were also mattresses on these beds. People lived here too. We have already cleaned up a bit here. 2 people slept here and there. To make it blow less, the house were covered with carpets. This is our basement. Water was heated and poured into bottles. That's how we warmed ourselves at night. In no other way, because there was no electricity. We lived here for a whole month. There were a lot of potatoes here, and my daughter was sleeping in this place. My husband and I slept here, and there was a grandmother sleeping. This is where we lived. We ate what was here. Even the candles are still here. I don't take them home. There are also cups here. Even bottled water was preserved. We ate supplies. We also ate eggs, thanks to the neighbor who kept chickens and distributed eggs to everyone on the street. It was free. We are very grateful. And over there, a man keeps cows. He also brought us milk here. This is what flew to us. The daughter was sitting over there with a coffee grinder in her hands. My husband brought wheat and she ground it, so that she could bake some kind of enzymes. There was no bread, so she wanted to bake at least some enzymes. She sat and ground grain here, and in the meantime the Russians came. They want that the gate should always be open, otherwise they would shoot. He came in and said, "Oh, will it be coffee?" She said, "No, not coffee. I'm making flour." He came over and looked. She opened the coffee grinder and showed him the flour. This is how she ground and poured flour into a bowl. And we baked such unleavened bread. The first bread that was baked with this flour, it was so delicious when hot. It seemed to me that I simply didn't eat the best in my life. But when my younger child sifted this flour with a tea sieve, a large pan of flour came out. But when a small piece of bread came out of it, he said, "And that's all?" The child imagined that it would be a large tray with pies. And it turned out to be one small loaf of bread, which was shared among 10 people. But when the bread got cold, The sand cracked on the teeth. But we ate it because there was nothing else. We dried corn in the fireplace and used a small manual coffee grinder. We ground corn, sowed it, and baked unleavened bread from it. The children watched with their father as the rockets flew over them. God forbid that this happens to someone again. They fired so hard that not a single window or glass remained in the house. Everything was covered with pellicle. It happened that the child was injured by shrapnel. Residents went to their medical department. But what they heard there was simply terrifying. And what did you want? This is war. Let the child die. It was a horror when a mother who brought her child and wanted to save it was told this. My child had a toothache in occupation. My father left home and was gone for 3 hours. We began to worry that he had been gone for so long, but he returned with a handful of oak bark. Because he remembered that oak bark is used to rinse the tooth. And then we cherished this handful so much that not only we, but also a neighbor treated her toothache with it. This church still has Cossack roots. Our village is small, and the only such architectural landmark is our church. Unfortunately, it suffered such terrible destruction during the occupation. Russians and the Russian road actually have nothing sacred. Even though they identify themselves with religious people. As soon as they occupied our village, they created a headquarters here, brought ammunition inside. They thought that these holy walls would protect them from our bullets and our shameful treatment of them. They placed a large amount of equipment around the church. This equipment, along with the Russian creatures in the church, was destroyed. I calculated that about 150 Russian cattle were destroyed here. Lukashivka will be remembered for a long time by these inhumans. They will think for a long time about how much horror they created here and how many of their accomplices died here. It was very nice here. There was a large number of church icons and frescoes. This is a national war, because the whole nation rose up. Everyone helped the armed forces of Ukraine as much as they could. Here, 2 women rescued 3 of our tankers and hid them for 7 days, although the village was completely teeming with orcs invaders. They hid them and then took them to the outskirts of the village and showed them the way. The boys survived. They destroyed 158 herds of beehive cattle. Many premises were destroyed, which we have already restored. This is a flag that survived the occupation. It hung above the highest point of Lukashivka, more than 20 meters high. The Russians were annoyed by this, and in order to knock down this flag, they aimed at the grain dryer building. The grass has already grown a little, and there are a lot of Uragan missiles. All our equipment is mutilated and broken. These are Roma, Ostap, and the smallest Masyanya. This is Roma, Smart. They sat in the cellar all night praying. And then I climbed out of the cellar, sat down at the table and wrote a poem. We are read in our heart and book, and the warmth of fraternal hugs. Since for all of us forever, may God grant that it will not happen again. Our Cossack spirit has not broken, the saints stand guard, and the orcs go to hell in tottering ranks in agony. Sensitive planet respond, save, and destroy the vile inhumans of the damned. Let both Krasnoyarsk and the Belarusian special forces get out of the Ukrainian house. I decided to build a small but beautiful church at my own expense, so that people have a place where they can gather and pray together. I think we'll build it in 2-3 months. The church will be in the Cossack Baroque style, since the village has ancient Cossack roots. Come to me. Oh, how handsome. This is how we slowly live in our village. The house was completely destroyed. Our task is to restore it. We started from the foundation and have been building here for about a week. We have almost finished building the walls. Then our guys will come and make the roof and windows. And after that, we'll move on to another houses. Our volunteer movement, Dobrobat, works throughout Ukraine. Our teams work in all areas where there were occupiers and restore houses destroyed by the occupiers. Last year, we visited here at the beginning of summer. Everything was destroyed here. I didn't believe that we could rebuild by autumn, but literally by September, everything half destroyed was rebuilt. I came here from Mariupol. I had to drive through 17 DPR checkpoints. I have been retired for 5 years. I have been working at Dobrobat since the first days. Why sit at home? It's hard. There are many thoughts. And here we work. Fewer thoughts, more benefits. I can't not do it. Until I'm taken to the front, I have to help in the reconstruction. There is a lot of use from me here. Our community in the Chernihiv region suffered the most. Out of 4,000 houses, 2,000 were either damaged or completely destroyed. This is 50% of households. Communal property is either damaged or completely destroyed. Not a single building or equipment remained in the condition it was in before the war. Over the past year, we managed to repair more than 700 houses. But the most important issue remains construction from scratch. 226 families lost their homes completely. At the moment, 20 new houses are being built. Come in, please. We lived here with my husband and child. Volunteers are building such a beautiful house for us. The child always asks, "Mommy, when are we going back to our greenhouse?" Our ruined house was painted green. She calls it greenhouse. The volunteers promised us that this one will also be painted green, so that it remains a greenhouse for the child. At one point, my husband and I lost the meaning of life. One thing that gave us strength was our 7-year-old daughter. We held on for her sake. But when reconstruction began, I honestly say we revived. When we entered and saw that the foundation was being dug for us, I cried a lot. And at that moment I realized that I want to live on. I thought it would get a little easier with time. No. Apparently, it was like that at once, and over time it becomes even more difficult. Perhaps, over time, a full understanding comes that you have lost everything. So much time has passed, and you live in someone else's house. You have nothing of your own. As long as we live, as long as the heart beats, I will thank God and volunteers for that much. I will pray for their health, because they are rebuilding our house. They give us a second life. This is our garden. We planted a young garden. There are apricots, plums, cherries, apples, pears. Oh, look, the beets are up already. I wasn't there for a while, but the weather is fast and it's already growing. How is it that we are in the village and don't plant a vegetable garden? Should I go to the market to buy something? I threw you greens, eat. Where are you sitting there? Here she lies. We'll hope for the best. A dog survived here. We take care of her, feed her every day. The dog guards the house and waits for its owners. We'll rebuild it all. God willing, everything will be fine. The main thing is that victory will come, to expel the evil from our land. And then we'll very quickly rebuild everything and make it even better. These are all my children, those who survived the occupation.